your article ready? Hey, she was working a half a day today. I'm picking up the note. I'm talking about this thing after last week. Taking notes.
Senator, officially, congratulations. Delegate, officially, congratulations. I'm going to do it all the way down the street.
I choose every time when I
Mine is, yes, I'm just going to that small one. There's no surprise. I think all these races, and I had no number. I wanted to go out in like 50s and be like, early votes in, we do good, let's go.
But you did make it.
I did not. You know, I didn't get off. That was the but I I'm sorry I missed that. They're both like great parties. So you get a full party, yeah. You know, like
I did. I took advantage of both. That's great. I took advantage of both.
so actually all right, good to see you.
you guys there.
Man, you did.
See you, sir. How are you? Good to see you. Congratulations on this.
Congratulations again.
Feels like it's still last night.
I know, right?
So that's why I apologize. I know where I can find that picture. I know. I'll get you. I know exactly where I'm going to get that picture. Oh, that's right. It's gonna be a good weekend. So congratulations and condolences.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here on campus here at the beautiful OCE Center on the grounds of Security Square. We're just so thankful to Pastor Bethea for allowing us to be here. Thank you so much. This is such a great building and space, and we're just very thankful to be here. The Charrette process has just been an amazing effort, and we're so excited to be able to tell you about everything tonight. We have our team leaders here that's going to lead us through a number of different things and talk to us. But I want to give the county executive and Speaker Jones an opportunity to kind of open us up for the evening. Sir, if you will.
Well, good evening. Kirk, thank you for all your coordination and partnership to make this happen. Thanks to Pastor Karen and Set the Captives Free for being such gracious hosts. This is always like coming home for me, so I'm thrilled that we're doing the presentation here tonight again. I want to thank all of our partners, our elected official partners. I know that we've got Senator-elect Ben Brooks, Delegate-elect Scott Phillips, Delegate Sheila Ruth and Councilman Izzy Patoka here, but Senator Charles Sidnor. We have just been so lucky to have such a high level of engagement and interest in the work here, and perhaps, and the community for sure. So thank you all for again being here. But I have to say that perhaps there's been no stronger partner for me in terms of county executive, what do you need to help light a spark and get this going, than the Speaker of the House, Adrienne Jones. So I want to thank her and acknowledge her. You know, a lot of what this process will be showing tonight was made possible because of our state and local partnership. The Speaker and our state legislators came to the table and matched $10 million so that we were able to physically take a stake and be part of the work by acquiring the former Sears building. I think it really has unlocked a lot of potential, and I don't want to steal the thunder of our experts tonight. But that's been made possible because of the strong partnership we have here in Baltimore County with our state legislators. It is on top of the work where we have finally taken down the Bennigans and the old IHOP. We have a Chick-fil-A coming. We are planting a flag here at the O Center with our health. This is, hopefully everyone's starting to feel it, that it's real. And I hope that this experience for all of you, led by our amazing planning department, and I'm going to thank Director Lafferty and his entire planning team, I hope that you all feel heard and know that that's our intention here, is that to the extent we can factor in all of those other conditions, the market, the owners, just what's actually possible, we want this, at the end of the day, to drive alongside the community's vision. And I think what you're going to see in here tonight is reflective of that. So I hope you enjoy the show, as it were. I will apologize in advance. I did promise my daughter I'd get home tonight to see her. Hope you can appreciate why. But I'm going to hang around for a while, but just want to thank you all for your participation, and I'm really excited to share the results, and then the real work begins of actually making that vision come to reality. But again, I want to welcome up and thank a critical partner in this work, Maryland Speaker Adrienne Jones.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. Good evening, everyone. My thoughts for you, because the room is not full. You all have neighbors. You all have relatives who live in this area. You have people who have thought process about this, who may have been on the Zoom calls. But what I like about this process is the input that was provided to the community. And that is not something that's done all over this country. I did some research on that. So I just commend you guys and the partnership here with the, we have the local and we have the state, and we have some state officials, and we have the best way I can see that there's a, whatever the final outcome, it would be from input from the communities. When you have all those partners together, you have a fantastic, hopefully fantastic, I'm claiming, she's gonna pray on that one. Reverend Bazaar, he's gonna, that what people want and what works together for this area comes together, and so that we can go forward and we can look back 10 years ago. You know, I don't remember when it looked like. So that's the input. Thank you for inviting me. I had notes up there. I did not use them. So because a lot of the things the county executive had said. But it's very important that this get done, because I've been hearing about it for years. We've been talking about it for years. And now this is the final meeting, I believe. So ready to see what great things can happen. And just keeping in mind that not everybody's going to get everything they want, but you're going to do things that the majority want that make sense for this area now and you looking for 10 or 15 or 20 years from now. People say, this is a great development, and I had an input in it. I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about you, the community. So now I'm turning it over to you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, you don't need notes. Whenever you're talking, we're always listening, so don't worry about that. So listen, we had such great excitement and energy that was into this. We had well over 800 surveys submitted. We were just incredibly excited about everything that was going on. But the people that are really spearheading all of this is JMT and ASG. So we want to have Jen come up and just begin to kick us off and talk to us a little bit about possible next steps and where we are. Jen?
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for the comments and for making sure that we could make this project happen. Really want to share with you and go through our presentation, and you should be seeing this on your screen shortly here. First, talking tonight, what we'll be talking about is, again, who we are as a team. And while some of this is going to be repetitive for those of you who have been a part of this process from the very beginning, we want to make sure that everybody is included and understands the process going through, how we got to where we are today, all of the information that we collected, the amount of people who were engaged, and really walking through this agenda of what can it look like and what are our next steps. So as you've heard, our team is Baltimore County, who has very much spearheaded this effort. Myself, my name is Jennifer Ray. I'm the project manager from JMT. Joining me tonight to walk through the presentation is both Amber Wendland and Will Story from Eyre St. Gross. We have also been partnered with our market analysis team from Landwise, and we do have students from Morgan State University who have been a part of our process as well. So what are we doing? We've seen this schedule many times over, and as we've gone through, we've had numerous touch points with the community as well as opportunities to be here in person and working side by side with our design team. We kicked off with this county kickoff only 2 months ago, and our Setting the Vision workshop was less than 1 month ago. It's hard to believe how much we've accomplished in less than 1 month. We had a series of design open houses and individuals coming to support and share information with us. And then, of course, our last meetings, the Saturday all-day workshop where people could come and see the designs that were completed and offer feedback and input so that we could refine those. Present those last Wednesday at a design refinement meeting, hear additional input, and then which brings us to here tonight as the closing presentation for the design charrette process. It is not the closing session of the entire project, but simply the closing session for our design charrette process. And wanted to share a few metrics with you. You can see on the screens and on your TVs how many people have been engaged with our county kickoff virtual meeting with 178, Setting the Vision workshop 105, and continuing to go through those numbers of those who have been in attendance, both in person and virtual, as we've had virtual opportunities as well. With the survey that Kirk had mentioned earlier, 868 respondents to the survey, which is phenomenal, and everyone should be applauded for their efforts because I know many of you also took these surveys out to your communities and you shared them with your neighbors, which really helped continue to promote so we could get that input. And when you look at the very bottom number there, the total website views, over 4,000 website views, individuals reading the information, coming on board to either fill the survey out, see what's been going on, read the meeting recaps. And that is all just a true testament to the engagement from the community and from the individuals throughout this area and region who are really made the input possible. So how were things developed? We've talked about off of this slide in the past as well, concept development based on balancing inputs. The community input are through all of these workshops, all of these sessions, the community survey, what we heard from all of you and how we integrated that with the different concepts. Looking at the market analysis and our economic and market forces, putting that in place as well. Understanding what the property owners, we've talked before of the number of property owners out here, what their needs are and what their desires are. And then those last two of both the environmental as well as regulatory constraints. This mall was built in the 1970s and built according to 1970 standards. It is now 2022. We have a much better understanding of our impact on the environment and other additional zoning and regulatory standards that as we do things moving forward, we have to be aware of and take into account. So starting with some of that community input and the input from the community surveys, we have the full community survey output and the final results for it on the website. And if you go on the very front page of the website, you'll see, and you can get a report of that. For those of you here this evening, we do have copies of that report up at the welcome table that you're also welcome to peruse through. But wanting to note just a few of these slides. So with this one, how would you describe Security Square Mall today? How would you describe your community today? There are words in here that talk about outdated and dilapidated, and just a lot of different words that talk about things that we want to see changed. So moving on to how would you describe for the future? What is it that you see this being? What else would you like to see here with shops and restaurants and other opportunities? But most importantly, how would you describe how you want your community to be in the future? And the key words that come out of that are safe, vibrant, thriving, a place for people to be. We continued throughout the process asking for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The strengths being the amount of land here, other strengths being the location and proximity for interstate systems. The opportunities, again, being the amount of land here, and the weaknesses being that there is not a great use of this land, and the concerns to move things forward really being about how do we provide more safety and how do we ensure that all of the property owners can work together with the community as well to create a vision that is beneficial for everyone. And then finally, with the community voices, what is it that people want to see? It kept coming back to restaurants, outdoor space, green space, and with a community vision to provide a safe, vibrant, and walkable community, giving opportunities to shop, dine, and enjoy recreation and entertainment for all ages. And the words that are bolded on the screen, safe, vibrant, thriving, walkable, community, all ages, how we make sure to incorporate that in every concept moving forward. With the market analysis, again, a slide we've talked off of at each of the different meetings. And in the end, what it really shows is that regardless of whether we have a very conservative approach, whether we're matching what we expect the market to be moving forward, or whether we're taking a very aggressive, a very proactive approach, it illustrates that this area has the ability to provide additional office and innovation space, residential space, restaurants and retails, and even a hotel as well, in addition to what is here already. And that's with a 10-year market outlook. And then with the owners, as we've talked about the different property owners, there are 5 different property owners. And as you heard earlier, Baltimore County being one of those property owners as well. Individuals who we are in the space of one of the property owners as well, and we've had the opportunity through this process to talk with each of these different property owners while we were doing the market analysis, as we had concepts developed to hear their input, and we'll continue to talk with the property owners throughout this entire process and moving forward as we build out the plan document. And then finally, something before we get into the concepts, which I know is what everybody's very excited to see, is what can it look like? But just want to bring up to this last slide that really shows and highlights, as people are asking about green space, as they're asking about parks, you can see on the left side of the screen, the inner circle, the smaller circle is approximately a 5-minute walk zone. The larger red circle is an approximately 10-minute walk zone. The green are parks. So there's definitely the direct correlation as people are saying we want to see green space and we want to see activity with the fact that there's nothing within a 10-minute or very little within a 10-minute walk from this area. And then finally, with the other on the right side of the screen, just seeing some of those different land uses, seeing where the community is located, seeing where there's major employment zones. Again, all aspects that will help build a stronger concept moving forward. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Amber and Will to talk through what it can be, looking at these concepts and the components.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. So the moment you've all been waiting for, we're going to walk through the plan ideas in its entirety, and we always like to start with the process. As Jennifer mentioned, we had great engagement with you all, with, I'm sure, people who are watching this on YouTube and streaming right now. And all of you who participated in those charrette processes saw images like you see on this screen throughout the week that we were here, the past couple town halls and engagement activities that we had over the past couple evenings, Wednesday evenings. And we tested lots and lots of ideas. So we listened to you all. We heard the desire for things like retail. We heard the desire for things like recreation, things for kids to be able to do, places to shop, places to eat, places to go, places to live, and even places to work. And so we tested these ideas. You can see just some options for recreation, options for lifestyle centers, options that are really aspirational and assume if we had a completely clear site and the county owned all of it, what could we do? And you know what we heard? We heard almost unanimously that people gravitated towards those aspirational options, those options that looked at what if this site was unified together, what could we create? And so our vision really focuses on that. And what we did was we took a step back and we said, of all the things that we've heard and all the things that we've drawn, what is our preferred vision plan that we've heard from the community? And that vision plan really focuses around 3 core elements. This greenway element that you can see on the screen, which hugs the I-70 and 695 corridor and provides a buffer for green activity, for places for people to walk, for potential sports fields, for community gardens, for all different kinds of outdoor, active, and even passive uses. We then looked at opportunities for mixed use and for entertainment uses and thought about those proximate uses to the site. So where is the neighborhood located? Where are those different kind of retail uses? How can we continue to kind of complement what's on the other side of the street from the site and plan in momentum with those different opportunities? And so for that mixed-use area, we heard ideas about people wanted walkability. They wanted parks that existed within that. They wanted space for outdoor dining. They wanted places for work and for office spaces. They wanted lots of activity on the streets, integrated bike lanes and street trees and lights and trails. And so all of that is encompassed in this mixed-use area. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we continue to move forward. We also heard a lot about opportunities for entertainment. So being able to watch movies outside, being able to listen to a concert, being able to go to the movies inside, whether it's at the existing theater or at a new theater in a different location. Lots of opportunities for these entertainment uses on this site, and we focused on kind of 2 key nodes for that. One that relates a little bit more to the existing community that's proximate to the site, and then one that's a little bit more front-facing at the intersection of Security Boulevard and 695. Ultimately, all of that manifests into this image that you see here, and you see a lot of blue boxes, you see some lines, you see different squares, and we are gonna walk through all of the components of this. But what I do wanna show you is in its entirety, this aspirational vision for the site looks at that greenway along the highway corridor. So you can see that wrapping around, and we'll unpack what's being shown there. And then you can see the development of mixed use in some of those entertainment areas with those blue footprints. And there's a lot that's gone into this. So I'm gonna turn it over to Will to talk about those different components that you see on this image.
Great. Thank you, Amber. So over the last 3 weeks, and we've had a lot of great conversations around all these different scenarios, but the one thing that was pretty consistent, people wanted to get into the details of a number of different planning components. And so what we want to do is walk through this vision, looking at those components in isolation. And as we go through them, we're going to start to understand how they relate to each other, but also how they're flexible. So, there was a lot of comments about program, different uses, types of retail, types of entertainment, and we're gonna. There was comments about how do you move through the site, both as a pedestrian, and as a vehicular passenger. We talked about the types of open spaces. So what we want to do is go through these one by one and really show how the framework, regardless of how this ultimately builds out, these elements work with any one of the scenarios that we'll touch on in a little bit. So first, site access. 3 major gateways in, 2 off Security Boulevard, 1 off Rolling Road. People are still going to drive here, so what you're seeing in that blue with the arrows are the preferred access routes through this site, thinking long term. And those are taking you to what we're showing as 3 primary district-wide or town center-wide garages. These are shared garages, ultimately being implemented when the mall is still there, but serving this community in this neighborhood long term. And so, again, it's primarily along a modified loop road that you have today. So the key is going to be making sure that that road is designed as a complete street. And that really puts a lot of focus on the pedestrian environment, safe walkable streets along those. It provides safe bicycle movement along those, multimodal, so making sure there's adequate spaces for buses to pull over, drop people off, and really creating that environment, because those will probably be a 3-lane road with a turn lane. So we want to make sure it is the safest possible environment. When you layer in the rest of the streets, again, you can start to see a grid form. This is great for a neighborhood, a town center environment. These are walkable streets. The navy blue are they're called neighborhood streets, and they have 2 types. The bottom left image, this could be a residential focused street, like slightly smaller sidewalk, little front yard green spaces up against those buildings, and still buffered by a planting strip. In different areas where we may have more retail, which we'll show in a second, you'll have wider sidewalks, areas for movement, but areas for dining and other activities. Then when you layer in the bicycle and pedestrian movement over the top of that, again, we're recommending 3 different types of bicycle systems within this plan. 1, the buffered bike lanes. So those would be along that primary loop road where you will have more traffic. You want people moving on those in a safe condition. With the blue, you've got shared lanes. These streets are going to be designed for lower speeds, and so bicycle traffic is encouraged with markings in the street, but people would move on those streets and not necessarily in a buffered condition. And then the third is the shared use path that actually you see going through the greenway there. And all 3 combined create a very mobile network for people and bicyclists. And that brings us to the greenway. So we talked a lot about the greenway. It really is the anchor, I think, to this development. It's the thing that's going to draw people in, but it's also going to act as an amenity to the people who will live here, work here, and obviously play. And so the key with this is it's a very large space. If you do the squint test, it's about a quarter of the site dedicated to open space. So the key is going to be how we program that. And What we're showing this image is a larger green space that has a series of rooms in it. And these rooms can be designed to have different activities for different ages, for passive active rec, for entertainment purpose, and just for simple play. So when we think about how these different rooms could play out, if you think about health and wellness, you could have along the trail different fitness equipment along the way, different nodes for that to happen. We've talked a lot about rec fields, providing that amenity both locally, potentially more as a regional destination. We've talked about that trail. What does that look like, that shared use trail? If you go around the site, it's about a mile walk. You could do a series of braided networks just through the greenway that would get that same distance. And so making sure it's detailed well, you have good signage and wayfinding along it, and creating that safe environment. So lighting through the greenway will be important as well. Again, thinking about different ages, youth, whether it's a splash pad or playground equipment, whether it's artistic in nature or the typical playground equipment you see in community parks. This is big enough to include urban gardens within this, community gardens. The bottom image is a outdoor museum dedicated to the community in this location. So having a component of civic understanding through this space that may celebrate the community or other elements in and around the area. And so then when you layer in the rest of the open space network, so you've got this gray-green amenity along the edge, but how do we capitalize on that and use that to come in and organize the rest of the site? So we start to show a variety of different space types, because these will allow for different uses and different activities. And so we're showing a combination of plazas, a town square, and an urban garden that really set the structure. And a lot of those spaces actually are anchored along where the mall used to be. So you're taking an indoor environment and giving that back to that green and open space that people talked about really wanting to see. So when you think about plazas, we showed the image of kind of a entertainment green space that may be on one end, and then on the other end you may have a plaza space that is for seasonal activities, whether it's ice skating rinks in the wintertime or spring festivals. Those can happen on what are predominantly more of a hardscape area, very flexible, very easy to program. When you think about the town square, this is dead center of the site. When the mall potentially comes down, this is the people living here and living around. This becomes that heart for them. This is a community space. Community programs could happen here. You could have the farmers market in this type of space. And it can also be a civic center for the area as well. And then we have these urban greens, these linear parks. And the purpose of these are to connect those different amenities together, those open spaces together through. And so some of these would be tied to where retail and restaurants are fronting. So they're basically a forecourt to that you can have some of that energy spill over into those spaces. They can have smaller playgrounds to entertain kids. And they can also be that movement from the more natural greenway into a more urban movement system of bikes and pedestrians as well. And then we look at sustainability. We heard a lot from the community about wanting to incorporate these elements in. And from a planning perspective, these are pretty easy things to start to think about early on. And as we get into the details, really keep them at the forefront. And so the greenway is a great opportunity for native species, plantings, areas to deal with runoff, but also to celebrate and educate. Obviously, we have a couple large garages. There are opportunities for solar panels on those to help with energy. The teal are a different version of stormwater management, bioretention areas. Let's see, here we go. That can be playful, but also functional. And then all the streets incorporating stormwater planters to collect runoff from both buildings and from the streets to help with that. So going to the ground level, the street level. So, I think one of the pies talked about entertainment and restaurants and that kind of active ground level. And so what we've mapped out here, and I think we showed this last Wednesday as well, is that retail, restaurant, residential amenity space, maker space, community space, services, all where you see those red lines, that's where we want to focus the energy of that kind of ground level activity. We start along the north end as the mall's still there, but you can see as the mall starts to go away, you get a very strong spine of that red cutting through and really connecting the either ends of that greenway and making a complete network of activity. And then when we lay in the overall uses, there was a lot of talk about that. Right now, with the market study, was heavy on residential and in a 10-year window, and that's the yellow color on here. And you start to see it around the edges, but as the mall comes down, you see a number of new, bigger residential buildings in there. These are flexible. They could be office. The blue color that you're seeing are recommended office locations. You have the civic elements with the church, some rec spaces, and then the gray is the garage. And so then this is a 3D view of that. So when we think about the massing and what the program's telling us for this site, we've got 1 to 2 story pavilions, retail office pavilions, all the way up to 5, 6 story residential buildings. And is there an opportunity for higher density? Yes, more parking, but we know with what we're showing here at that max of 6 stories, we can park on this site. And so I'm going to turn it over back to Amber.
Thank you, Will. Okay, everyone just take a breath, because that was a lot of information. We've kind of painted the picture. We've been capturing all of the things that we've heard. And I'm sure that all of you are probably asking, how do we get there? That is 90 acres of development. We're showing all kinds of awesome things that we want to see on the site. How do we get that done? So I'm going to just briefly kind of talk through our approach to phasing. And so this is what the site currently looks like. So just take a step back and forget those amazing images Will was showing just a second ago. And this is what it looks like outside when it is daylight. And you can see, my wonderful colleague Alex in that top image in a sea of parking. We're all very familiar with the site. And one of the great ways to start to incentivize development is by laying the initial infrastructure improvements. And so one of the near-term catalytic projects would be to start to lay out the things that Will was just talking about, laying out that pedestrian infrastructure, laying out those bike lanes, laying out some of the trails, some of the key open spaces that we can establish now and start to create some of those opportunities for people to gather and for the church to hold services outside and other activities like farmers markets and different gatherings. And so that near-term kind of catalytic project will lay some of the framework for that future development. So it actually makes it easier, if you will, more of an incentive for those types of new developments that we want to see start to happen. This is actually what happened in Harbor East, if anyone is familiar with Harbor East in Baltimore. The infrastructure was laid first, which then kind of gave life to the buildings going up. And we are obviously not talking about that level of density, but it's a really key piece to get the ball rolling. So near-term catalyst, laying that infrastructure. The first phase really looks at that 10-year market demand, and this is what we call the fair share market demand, so that kind of medium scenario. So we have a high, medium, low scenario. This one is just looking at that medium scenario, what we projected over 10 years, and showing that on the site. So remember, we have lots of inputs into this process. We have your voices, we have the interests of the property owners, we have the capacity of the market, what the economics are telling us can be built on this site, site constraints. So this is showing that market demand on the site, and it's showing that market demand at a key point. It's at the key kind of entry point where you're along Security Boulevard as well as Rolling Road. So it presents a new face. It obviously requires some collaboration amongst a couple of the key property owners, but it's at a really pivotal point in the site plan to start to continue to move that momentum forward. So you can see that first phase. And again, this all ties directly into the images that Will was showing. So you're seeing some different residential mixed use, some office space, as well as ground floor retail opportunities with a shared parking facility that would help serve both the existing mall and tenants as well as new tenants on the site. I believe there's also a hotel as part of this phase as well. So that's 10-year market demand. If we, look at maybe the 10-year plus or the high scenario, if we're a little bit optimistic, we know there's a national housing shortage. We think that there's some additional potential to get a little bit more on this site. We start to think about some of those other complementary uses and how we can continue to build on that public realm. So can we continue that retail corridor, that experience, having those outdoor dining experiences, having new restaurants, having gyms on the ground floor, all kinds of wonderful activities, and also start to create and build our green infrastructure, that greenway that we were describing that has recreation fields, community gardens, parks, playgrounds, all different types of wonderful recreation activities, and also continue to think about parking. So we've thought about parking throughout. It's not glamorous, but it is necessary. And so we want to make sure that we are providing adequate parking on the site to accommodate all of these things. So this is sort of that 10-year plus option, and this builds on that existing kind of phase one, if you will, a build out. So you're going to see as I click to the next slide, this layers in a few more footprints, and this is building on that sort of other entertainment node that's to the southwest corner of the site. And so this is showing the site build out without demolishing the mall. So there's a lot that we can do with the site. We can create a really great environment. We can buffer the mall a little bit. We can create new walkable environments. We can create this greenway, even with the mall still being there. So we're trying to think practically about this and how this might get done. But if we're thinking another 10, 15 years into the future, the mall might not be in great shape. It's going to be another 15 years older. And so ultimately, we want to plan for the potential of that going away. And so that, I'll kind of click back and forth, but you can see the fill-in of that site with some residential buildings. And the great news is that as part of this phasing, we have addressed a lot of the parking needs on the site. And so that final infill is largely just programmatic uses. So what I mean by that is it is residential mixed use, it's retail experience, it's that key town square right in the heart of this wonderful new neighborhood. It's other amenities that you can access on the site. So again, this is really that full build out. So I just kind of clicked through to get up to everything that Will was talking about. So you can see how that might happen over time. And if we take a look at that, this again is that 3D model. Will showed a different angle of it earlier, but looking over the site right now, we're looking to the northeast. So we're hovering over 70 and looking towards Security Boulevard and 695. And you can see that greenway wrapping around, buffering that highway and cleaning some of that air from cars driving on that highway. And you can see the different green networks that are weaving through this wonderful new active neighborhood with that town square in the middle. You can imagine that Reston example that Will was showing earlier with the ice rink potentially being there or at one of the other key plazas in this space. So one of the things that we're doing as part of this, Jennifer mentioned that this is our last kind of community charrette, but this process, as I just showed, is going to continue for many, many years. So we're going to have continued coordination. We've already started those conversations with the other property owners. There's a lot of other things kind of happening as those inputs are coming in, and we're continuing to coordinate them. And you all understand that things change over time. And so we want to build enough flexibility into this plan to provide for some of that changing dynamic of the world that we live in without compromising that vision. And so again, those key inputs that we talked about earlier are going to continue to impact the way that this gets developed. So we have a great framework. We are so excited about where this can go, and we want to make sure that that framework and that overall vision continues to manifest into the future, even if slight adjustments are made over time. And so you can see here, we'll just I have a couple more slides to close out with, but there are a number of factors that are going to impact this 10-year plan, this 10-year development horizon, if you will. And so the very first image on the far left is what I just showed earlier. So that's that 10-year market demand, fair share. You already saw that. You guys are experts now. You know what that is. There are other scenarios that could happen. So this middle scenario says the willingness of other owners to partner, as well as a partial mall demolition. And so we have heard from some of the property owners that they would be open to demolishing a little bit more of the mall earlier on. And if that's the case, that's great. We would want to absolutely utilize that new land and incorporate that into our phasing, into our thinking moving forward. So we provided flexibility for that. We have a little option that weaves that into the plan while still preserving that overall vision framework that we identified. We also know that there's another option that might say, we have willing partners that want to collaborate and we want to build a regional recreation hub. That would be a tremendously exciting use. It would be highly active. It would provide lots of different new opportunities to the site. And again, that is something that can be flexed into this plan while still manifesting that full vision of the greenway, of mixed use, of the entertainment, of all those things coming together. And so you can see here that there are different options for how this might continue to progress over 10 years, but again, preserving that vision. And so you can see that as those continue to build, this image that's on the far left is showing you that vision plan, right, that we started with, those key elements that we've been talking about. And then the two images on the left just show how that might continue to build out as the mall stays or as the mall goes away. And so all the things that we talked about, those plazas, those community hearts, the greenway, the entertainment nodes, the walkability, the bike trails, the running routes, the outdoor retail experiences, those pedestrian environments, even the parking, all of those things are still manifested on this site, even as some of these other inputs might continue to kind of change or tweak a little bit over time. So we're really excited that this framework and this community effort has been able to lay the ground for future development on the site. We're excited about the flexibility. We are excited about the potential. And I just want to turn it back over to Jennifer to close us out, but thank you all for all of the amazing input that we have received as part of this process. This design would not be this design without everything that we've heard. So everyone should kind of take this and be proud of it because it's really the culmination of all of the voices we've heard this past month.
Great. Thank you so much, Amber and Will, for walking through all of that information. As Amber noted, it is a lot of information that we've gone through, and we recognize that it's a lot of information. These slides will be on the website, www.reimaginesecuritysquare.com, within the next 2 days, so that you'll be able to look over them again. I saw many people in the room taking photos of the screens that we have here, so we will have that available. You heard a lot about what's next. How do we get there? How do we get there from here? And it can still feel very large, even of doing infrastructure improvements. There are some very immediate items and some very kind of logistical style items that we have. So our immediate what's next and the items that we are looking at is even coming out of here, we still have some additional minor refinements that we want to take on. We want to continue that coordination efforts and talking with each of the owners over the next 2 months, really walking through all of this information again as we've presented it here, hearing back from the owners of what their desires are, what their continued plans are, how they see this flexibility, what might be those initial first steps working with the county, beginning that process of which of these options would we be able to really start moving forward with first. I mentioned the refinement and doing some of those plan refinements, doing that and looking at having that finalized come January. And then everything we've been doing, all of this amazing effort, all of the input, all of this process will be put into a plan document. And with that plan document, really having that finalized by the end of February. So it's going to be something that can truly be this document of all of this hard work. We will have it documented. We'll have the voices documented. We have the market analysis, as well as just the output from all of our different interviews and meetings with the different property owners, so that this will not become an effort that is lost in any way, shape, or form, but truly is going to be able to be that document to guide this effort moving forward in the years and decades, as you heard with some of these scenarios to come. So that concludes our formal presentation here of all of this information. And again, just thank you so much for all of your time, all of your effort. I look out into this audience. I know from seeing some of the folks who are online, there are several of you who have been here with us through almost every single day that we have been here as well. And we cannot thank you enough for your participation. Your participation is what made it possible to get to where we are. And as you have already heard from all of our speakers up here at the beginning, this is only the beginning of this process. While this is the closing session of the design charrette process, it is just the beginning of a project process to move forward. We will continue to be able to keep individuals informed both on that website address, which is on your screen. If you want to hold your phone up to the screen and click the QR code, that will take you directly to the website as well. And certainly to submit any emails or questions to the email address on there, securitysquaremall@baltimorecountymd.gov. At this time, for those that are here in person, we do want to offer an opportunity. If there are pressing questions, we do have individuals who will be able to kind of walk up and down with microphones, and we're able to take a handful of questions in our time remaining. And we'll certainly have individuals here who will be able to help participate in those questions. Both Scott and Rob are individuals with microphones who will be able to walk up and down.
Good evening. I'm Linda Dorsey Walker. I just wanted to raise questions about a couple of things that I know I had brought up, but I didn't have mentioned tonight. Specifically, community meeting space, which is lacking in this area. The opportunity to relocate some county jobs from Towson over to this side of Baltimore County at this location, such as the Board of Elections, some of permits and licenses. In addition to that, I do know that one of the things that's made this a utilized space over the years, even as it began to decline, were features like Universal Circus coming here. Exactly where do you have enough open land for them to continue coming, looking at the scenario that you have presented? We also talked about restaurants like Texas Roadhouse Restaurant and some other family-oriented restaurants. But more important is this. Initially, this area was supposed to be a federal enterprise zone. I don't know whether you all are going to try to seek that kind of funding to do some of the massive changes you're talking about now. But at the time that it was under that discussion, we were also talking about having a red line that would run past this area and go through this section of Baltimore County, across the city, and on the other side of the county. Now, I do know that MDOT and MTA is in conversation about that now, but of their 7 scenarios that they've currently got presented, only one of them now includes this area. Only one of the 7. They've decided to put their emphasis on capturing Columbia and Ellicott City and Route 40. I'm hoping that they'll take the route that will come up Rolling Road, include this area, and have people who are part of CMS and Social Security Administration, FBI, and the folks working at this mall included so that there's a source for jobs here and they have access to public transportation. Then it was supposed to come back down Woodlawn Drive and go across the city. This is why I hope that the county executive hadn't left. Right now, their proposal has it ending at Bayview Medical Center with the possibility 2 or 3 of the options of going to Essex. I am pushing for that line, that scenario, to instead go through Turner Station and Dundalk into the Trade Point Atlantic area so that the people on this side of the county will have access to those $40, $50, and $60 an hour jobs they've been touting. We need access to those jobs and the transportation hub. And unless it goes through this mall, how are we going to have some of those people be able to pick up that transportation? So I haven't heard anything about the Three Bridges project or the MTA transportation hub and how it would tie into this, as well as those other things that would bring about a daytime walking traffic that would guarantee the sustainability of this project long term. I also asked at one point if we could turn this into a smart mall where it would be totally energy sustaining.
Great, thank you for all of those questions. Absolutely. And that is a lot of questions at once, so I will start working through them. As far as the federal enterprise zone, I will actually ask Director Lafferty to speak to that and others as well as they see fit. But going back to several of those first questions, as you were asking about what is the community space and what about some of these restaurants and how do we have this programming here? So as far as the community space and having that space available to use, what you saw in each of these different scenarios just identifies space that is available. It's not targeted towards any specific restaurant or retail or even what can go in as we look at that office and open space and innovation space. So that is all going to be open. You heard the word Amber mentioned, the flexibility in there, and I think that's one of the most critical words to keep in mind as we look at how this space develops. You saw the potential uses, but it was never, and we are not, with this plan, we don't identify exactly what goes where. We look at it holistically as this can be office and innovation space, this can be residential space, this can be retail and restaurant space. So as far as that community space, it can go in any of those areas, and that can be worked later as this plan continues to develop of exactly where in some of that office and innovation space it can fit. For the restaurants, we did hear very loud and clear coming out of all of the community input, and it showed in the survey responses as well, more places to eat, and not fast food, but casual dining, sit-down dining, more options, a variety of options. That also is shown within the plan. I know you mentioned Texas Roadhouse. We've had the opportunity to speak during several of the design open houses as well. Whether it's Texas Roadhouse or any other restaurant, again, that's not something, through this process, we do not identify the vendors or the businesses specifically that are coming in. It's just, again, looking at what that space can hold, and through the market analysis, understanding what can be accounted for here. And when we look at that market analysis sheet in there, and we talk about how much more space can retails and restaurants be in addition to what we have today. That's where we know and how those visions came to be, looking at the amount of space on the plan that is colored for the retail and the restaurant. So that is incorporated again. Some of the other questions were, and this is where you had asked quite a lot all at once. I'll wait till the end on the zone that's looking at this. You've mentioned about the transportation and the other projects. There are 2 other major projects in this area. They're not through Baltimore County. They are through Maryland Department of Transportation. One of them is through the State Highway Administration, M.SHA, and that is the Triple Bridges project. We have talked and seen those plans simply to know that what those projects are looking at, the footprint of that project does not impact the property that we are looking at here, so that as we've developed this plan and looked at this vision, we know that anything that's being done with that triple bridges as shown currently or as discussed currently, as developed currently, would not impact this footprint. So there's nothing that we're looking at that would have to go away later. That, of course, would provide, based on what comes out of the triple bridges, that is still an ongoing project with another agency and with another design team on board. Well, we've identified enough to know that it might, based on what comes out of it, we might have greater ease of access here, But again, it's not going to affect the footprint of what we've been looking at. With the east-west corridor studies, which is in the previous decades ago was known as the Baltimore Red Line, is the east-west corridor studies. Again, that is a project through the Maryland Department of Transportation Transit Administration. And they're the ones looking at those options, and you so eloquently summarized what those options are. With this project, as you looked at those different gateways, and we identified the gateways within the vision, we understand, and having worked with and talked with what those corridors are, that where that potential station could be, should the corridor along Security Boulevard be chosen, again, there's nothing this plan will do that will preclude that from happening. And in fact, by being able to put in some of that infrastructure and how we have it shown, it takes away the vastness of the amount of parking. And Amber showed a great slide that discussed that and showed that imagery of how vast that parking is. So even for individuals, should the red line not come, or the east-west corridor not come into this area, and it continues to be bus service as there is today and public transportation as there is today, those infrastructure improvements alone will help break up the amount of asphalt an individual is looking at as they're walking across and turn it into an easier walk of a block-by-block walk. I've talked with some of you at the different meetings that when you look at Security Boulevard and Rolling Road and the distance from Security Boulevard to the entrance point today, the shortest distance is 750 feet. That feels like a very long way to walk when you have nothing but pavement in front of you. If you go into any urban environment and walk 2 city blocks, 3 city blocks, it doesn't feel anywhere near as long, and it's the same distance. And so that's some of what these infrastructure improvements begin with and how that helps bring that to making it a more walkable, bikeable, a more friendly place to be and want to be. And that's regardless of what transportation mode is coming to Security Boulevard, what type of public transportation there is, whether it is the east-west corridor, continued service with the various bus lines, as well as the bus lines that currently come and serve back in the backside of Security Square near the AMC movie theater. As far as the overall east-west corridor and your comments about where it should lead to, I would encourage each of you to please check that project out. That project is being run through MDOT MTA, and so I'm sure that they would love to have additional input as well. For the final, I believe that was everything other than the federal enterprise question. Ah, yes, thank you. So again, that was the one piece. I knew there was one other I was missing in there. So the other was the jobs, and how can we move county jobs into this area as well? Again, that's very similar to the answers for the restaurants, the retails, and the community space. With the different visions, with the vision that you see and the different